Morning. It's Saturday, August 29th, and I've come to the realization that we are a violent nation. And I'm not talking about going to war and fighting for our preservation. And I'm not talking about police brutality. And I'm not talking about all the mass shootings that go on. I'm talking about our propensity to react violently. Throughout its history, America has been a violent nation. The degree of violence its citizens have inflicted upon one another over several hundred years between the history of the British colony and as an independent nation is huge. The issue is domestic violence, the violence we perpetrate upon one another. And that's where we have our bloody history. Now, you may think I'm off the wall, but just look at our history. In the wild, wild West, we had gunslingers and vigilantes, and they killed people with impunity, and they were heroes, like Wild Bill Hickok and Billy the Kid. Those were heroic names in various parts. And then we had mobsters and mountain men, the mafia. And of course, there were many family feuds like the Hatfields and the McCoys. And let's not leave out slavery and the way we treated human beings. So we have a wide variety of vivid traditions of personal and collective violence. Now, if you ask somebody for a definition of violence, you would probably get many different answers. And from what I've been reading, there are really three distinct pieces of violence. They come in three categories: war, criminal, and social. And you could count political violence too, but most of us throw that into social violence. Now, no matter which category you're looking at, in order for an act to be considered violent, it must kill or injure persons or animals, or do significant damage to property. That's a very broad definition. And I am really only concerned with one of these categories. And let's call that social violence. And this is where the Black Lives Matter movement and the current protesting and rioting fits into my rant this morning. The Black Lives Matter is a peaceful movement at heart. The protesters in that movement are not the ones who are rioting and looting. The rioters and the looters are the perpetrators of the social violence in this case. And their violence is not the kind of violence that usually ends up with bodily harm. Their violence is the looting and destruction of property, and the looting and destruction of people's morale. Because we look at this situation, and we see people who look like us. They're not raggedy people who are dressed in rags or look poor. They look like us. Us being average human beings who dress appropriately, who don't necessarily look like we need a handout or anything. And if you watch some of the episodes that I have seen on television, probably filmed by TikTok or something like that, you will see well-dressed people running into stores and coming out with boxes of stuff that they probably don't even need. And why? Why is that happening? Because people are taking advantage of the situation. And it boils down to our history. Because in our history, we have put the responsibility for managing the actions of our people, of our citizens, in the hands of local authorities. And in those hands, they haven't necessarily been able to step up to the plate and do the job right. But they have been reluctant to bring in a higher level of authority, like reaching out to the state or the federal government. And if you look at our history with respect to that, you will find out that it wasn't until the middle of the 20th century that the state police or the federal government ever came to assist a municipality. So calling them for assistance is a relatively new thing. And now I'm looking at the Black Lives Matter situation, and I think that there is a force that has come to bear that may be able to turn this thing around without the violence or the threat of violence. And that is the action of the major league sports teams in this country, who have decided, because of the shooting of Jacob Blake, that they are not going to perform for their fans. So they are boycotting, and it may very well come to pass that this boycott is the one that breaks the back of the looters and the rioters. Because this country is sports crazy. And if we choose to have actions that deprive us of something that we really care about, then perhaps it will affect the social violence that seems to exist with this particular protest movement. Because people will stand there and say, "What the hell are you doing? We won't be able to watch the Knicks or the Nets or the Yankees or the Islanders or the Rangers or the MSL because of what you're doing." This may break the back of the social violence that exists within this protest movement. And so I hope the pro teams continue their boycotts. Now, I'm not in favor of kneeling when they play the Star-Spangled Banner or something. But a player's strike, warms my heart. I think that is an effective way to get your message across. Because these strikes encompass the full team. It's a unified group that is stepping up to the plate and saying, "Stop this nonsense." So that's my rant for today. And I hope that these boycotts by the teams works. So I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.